Live but recorded from the BBR studios. I am Chris, your co-host, and you are who?
Corey. I thought you were the host.
Oh, am I the host now?
You're the host.
But we are line locked, and I guess I'm your host now. All right. Hey, let me start it off this time.
Okay.
Are you here?
Hey, you took it from me.
I know. See?
I'm here. Are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. All right, real quick. We got Christmas ornaments. This is going to be the last time we're going to talk about it. We're sending them out the first week of December. So you only got a week or so to give us your address. After that, freebies are gone.
Yeah, someone said, send me that damn ornament. Like,
He's tired of hearing about it, I guess.
hey, at least we have a loyal listener.
Yeah, one loyal listener for sure. Yeah, we didn't even recognize. I think we got like 5 listeners now.
5 now.
I think 5 only because we got a review.
Oh, a review?
We got a review on the podcast part, but not through YouTube. This is just from the podcast.
Oh, boy. All right.
It's not great, Chris.
Oh, jeez.
All right, the review.
Hit me with it.
In quotation marks. This comes from somebody, okay? They're anonymous, so I don't even know who it is. It says, this podcast is just okay-ish. The hosts seem to stay away from actual criticism. Their opinions seem to be middle of the road and without any controversy. They are as soft as single-ply toilet paper. Grow a pair and take a stance.
Oh, right. All right. Well, I don't know how to respond to that.
Well, I'm going to take a stance. I'm going to take a stance. A hot dog is a sandwich. A hot dog is a sandwich. That's my stance on it. I said what I said, Chris.
All right. All right.
Controversial?
That's a little controversial.
It's a sandwich, damn it.
Okay.
You got 2 pieces of bread surrounded by 1 piece of meat.
All right.
It is a sandwich.
Okay.
I don't care if the breads are connected on one side. Most of the times when I eat hot dogs, it breaks apart anyway. I'm a messy eater.
Oh, my.
So it turns into a sandwich.
Well, my controversial part of all this, along the same lines, damn it,
all right,
is if I buy a pack of 8 hot dogs,
that pisses me off too.
I want to buy a pack of 8 buns.
Yeah, what's up with that?
Well, that's up there. I don't want to buy 6 or 12.
It's big grocery. Big groceries handling it.
How's that for a freaking stand, man?
Yeah,
jeez.
Well, thank you for the comment.
Hey, yeah,
and if you guys wouldn't mind, comment on the podcast. If you're listening to the podcast, it definitely pushes up the ranks. We don't care if you make fun of us like that. I don't care. This guy,
it's all right.
All right. So in the news, F1 race happened in Las Vegas this last weekend.
Okay.
First time since 2007, and they had a really small circuit back then. This one is actually a really long circuit. I think I have it written down somewhere. It's got 17 turns, 2 long straights with DSR.
Yep.
3.85 miles. The best lap was on qualifying and practice was 1 minute 32 seconds. So it's pretty long course. It was kind of plagued from the start, though. Right. So Thursday they had testing, and I think within the first lap or 2, somebody went over a water main manhole cover, and it pulled it up and it hit the car.
No,
yeah, Ferrari, and they end up. It destroyed the car enough where they had to replace it, and because they had already started, Ferrari actually got penalized in the polling. So I don't know exactly. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do right now.
You are fake news.
Because I don't know anything about this. This is all coming off the cup. The penalty, let's say it was 10 cars. So say that the Ferrari qualified 3rd, they would be 13th because they switched cars, something like that.
Yeah.
So they got penalized, which I thought is kind of shitty. You have a track, the track's supposed to be good, and then a manhole cover comes up.
Beyond their control.
Ruins the car, and they still get penalized.
Yeah, that's not right at all.
It was a big controversial thing.
Well, yeah.
Friday night they had qualifying. I don't know how they do all that shit, but it's F1. So, if you guys do, you can tell me. But number 1 polling was Charles Leclerc, Frenchman. Number 2 was Max Verstappen, and he was 0.378 seconds behind, and George Russell was 0.386 seconds behind.
Okay.
So pretty tight. Most drivers hated the circuit. They said it wasn't a driver's circuit. It was more of like a spectator's circuit, and they said they weren't going to be very big fans. Actually, Verstappen was very critical of the racetrack, hated it. So the race was actually Saturday night, and it came on pretty late for us. It was like almost 2 a.m. before they started because, it's over on Mountain Time or some shit. What's the West Coast time? Whatever that one is.
California time.
California time was on that time. So it started pretty late for us. I didn't stay up and watch it. I only got the review afterwards.
Yeah.
So it ended up going down like this. On the polls, it was number 3 was Sergio Perez, and he was 2.2 seconds, 2.25 seconds behind. Number 2 was Charles Leclerc. I don't know how to do the French names. And then number one, the most critical driver out there was Max Verstappen, which I looked up this because I'm not a huge follower of F1, but I just know that he's kind of a household name. So I was like, let's see how he was doing this year. Because Netflix has a really cool series on these guys coming up, Max Verstappen, because he hasn't been around all that long, maybe 5 years. And at the time, Lewis Hamilton was just nailing it. Well, turns out he has won 17 of the 20 races.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, so 17 out of the 20 races, and then he podiumed in 19. So that means he's got up to a third in 19 of those 20.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was reading a review on one of the F1 forums, and they said that he is considered the Jackson Messamore of F1.
Oh, yeah. I see Jackson's made his name out there.
Yes.
Way to go, Jackson.
Yeah. So that was kind of cool. That's the only thing I'm going to really talk about news-wise. Did we get a tow update?
Oh, tow update's still black.
Still black. All right. Well, that's it.
Still there, though.
So this week, we have a special guest. He's actually a friend of a friend, and I've only spoke maybe 5 words to the guy. So this is going to be a testament whether we are good at podcasting or not, because we don't really know him. And he doesn't really know us. He probably's heard about us the same way we've heard about him. But it is the great Bruce Westfall. Westfall? We'll bring him in. What's your last name, buddy?
Westfall.
Westfall.
It's like it sounds.
Yeah.
Who's talking to them still
Yeah, I had it written down wrong here. I was like, that's not right.
What'd you say?
Westwall is what it's written down.
Call me anything you want.
Yeah. All right. So how are you doing, Bruce?
Great. How about you guys?
Not too bad, man. We've heard so much about you from Nick and Bill and Bubba. But I tell you, I met you once up in Michigan, Martin, Michigan. Yeah. And I knew I was going to like the guy because Bill was fixing his tire that he had ran a screw into.
Oh, yes, I remember.
And he got it all fixed up, and Bill was kind of frustrated. And he had it in the trailer, about to air it up, and Bruce comes over and he goes, "You think that thing's going to hold any sailboat fuel?" And I was like, I like this guy. That was kind of my first interaction with you. So, yeah, it was very, very funny. So we're bringing you on because I think you have a very interesting story, and we send out like a little podcast questionnaire, and you brought back a whole novel, and you have all kinds of cool stuff to talk about. So where do you want to start in your history in the sport?
Oh my gosh, wherever you guys want to start, really. Right now, I'm all about top dragster. So that's where I'm at currently. But if you want to know a little bit about a history,
I want to start. I want to start when you were a kid because I know that there's a lot of cool stuff, and it's a little bit off of the actual drag racing side of it. But let's just start with how you grew up and your. I guess your dad was.
My dad was a sand drag racer.
Yep.
In the Midwest during the 70s and the 80s, sand drag racing really started to take off. And my dad got interested. I was probably 8 years old, and he took me to my first sand race. Of course, previous to that, I was like every other kid my age in the 70s, like 2 inches from the screen every time the ABC Wide World of Sports had asphalt drag racing on, watching Will Downey and everybody back in the day.
Yeah.
And so my dad took an interest in it, and I thought, man, this is going to be awesome. And he started sand racing, I think, in 1980. And sand drag race Jeeps, and then wound up building a funny Jeep. He was also in the printing business, which took him basically to Akron. One of his accounts was his name's Paul Sergi, the guy that owns Summit Racing Equipment. Oh. And he was working out of a very small shop. I remember driving there with my dad, and there were parts laying everywhere around him, and he had 2 or 3 employees. So it was very, very cool in perspective looking back now as to what happened to Summit Racing and where Paul was able to take the company. But my dad printed all the magazines. I don't know if either one of you are old enough to, it wasn't even a magazine. It was like a perfect bound book that came out once or twice a year. My dad printed all those.
Really?
And he started talking to Paul about sand racing, and Paul was interested in getting into the 4-wheel drive parts and off-roading, stuff like that. And sand drag racing was sort of a connection point from the off-road fans and to sand racing and drag racing. So one thing led to another. He wound up being sponsored by Summit Racing for almost 10 years.
Wow.
And man,
that's what we need to do, Chris. We need to find somebody on the up and up and get them to sponsor us.
Right.
Turn into Summit Racing.
Matter of fact, almost 20 years ago now, I walked out on the starting line at then Spring National. Actually, it was the Pontiac Nationals here in Columbus. And I walked up to Paul. I said, "You probably don't remember me," and I had to introduce who I was. He goes, "Oh my gosh, he totally remembered me," which was
really?
so cool.
Oh, cool.
But yeah.
Let me ask you with the sand drag racing. Is it very, very similar to regular drag racing as far as you have a tree?
It's only 300 feet.
Okay.
It's very, very short. And the organization we raced with was the East Coast Four-Wheel Drive Association. So all of the classes were four-wheel drive mandated, except for a class called XXA, which was an experimental double XA, which was a two-wheel drive class. And most of those guys, they all became alcohol racers later on in the asphalt.
Okay.
Joe Camella. There's a whole bunch of old names from the IHRA funny car guys.
So on the four-wheel drive guys, do they have like sand style tires on front and rear?
Yeah,
really?
Super scoops. Yeah, really? Which are basically drag slicks with big scoops vulcanized onto them.
Yeah.
And Dick Cepek made some smaller sand tires and things like that back.
So they have a tree just like a normal drag strip, or is it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And do they do like a sportsman style?
Oh, what's that?
Is it like a sportsman style tree, or is it
most of it? Yeah. When you get into the X classes, without getting into the weeds here, the faster classes, a lot of times they'd run Pro Tree.
Yeah.
Which was a 4/10 Pro Tree.
And are their reaction times pretty similar to a normal drag strip reaction time, like double O's?
Yeah, with no delay box and heads up racing. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've
never into 30 lights and stuff like that. Every once in a while, some 20 lights, but
we've seen some TikToks with sand stuff, but I've never actually seen an event or even a YouTube video on it. I may have to check that out.
It is crazy. It's still going crazy out west. I mean, really? I'm on some Facebook pages and things, and some nostalgic stuff too from the old days when it started taking off in the Midwest. There was a sand track in Zanesville. They did it in Norwalk. There's still one up in Lisbon, Ohio.
Yeah.
And I think some tracks down your way too.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
Well, it's not, I would assume it's, I don't know. Is the surface, I would say the surface would be track to track. You would have to make a lot of adjustments, right? Because it's going to be a lot different. The sand styles and the thickness and all that stuff, similar to
how much water's in the sand. And you're constantly adjusting for it. And keep in mind, this is all heads up racing too, weight to cubic inch.
Right.
There's no bracket. Well, there's bracket now, but back in the day when we were racing, it was all heads up.
So kind of like the gasser classes, weight to cubic inch. So you'd be like a C gas or something for weight to cubic inch. Okay. And then it was heads up in that class because of your weight to cubic inch. That's pretty cool. And then on the end, I assume it's the same styles. You have traps, so you get a time slip that shows your intervals and everything.
Slip. Yeah, and they have to dress the track a lot, obviously, because the faster you go, the deeper the ruts are.
That was my other thing: is how do you trip it accurately if that surface is always kind of moving up and down,
much higher off the asphalt, off the sand. You've got to have them way up, and even the rear engine cars and such are probably 2 or 3 inches further off the ground. Than an asphalt.
And you did the 4-wheel drive style of that, right? So front engine, what it was, Jeeps and stuff.
It was a tube chassis, but it had a fiberglass tilt body, funny car.
Really?
But it was Jeep.
Wow.
But it had fairings and wings on it, and
That's cool, man. That's cool.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and it definitely continued to set the hook in my future.
Yeah. So you went through that, and what made you? I mean, I know you said that you saw it on TV, the asphalt stuff, and that kind of got you interested in
I revered drag racing. There's one thing that would stop two things actually: Evel Knievel or drag racing back in the 70s, right?
Yeah.
If they were on TV, everything stops.
Yeah, I understand.
And we watched that, and of course, I was the normal country boy, moving the antenna around, trying to get all the fuzz out of the screen.
Yeah.
I just loved it, and I still do. Huh. I was totally hooked on drag racing from a very, very early age.
So what was your, when you went to the asphalt, what was your first car that you drove?
I bought a Mark Williams car. Back in the day, it was a 1994 Mark Williams alcohol car. I didn't know what I was doing.
You're going in deep.
I knew what I
from
wanted
the start.
to do, but what I was going to do with the car, it was an apples and oranges deal. It was a 250-inch car to go bracket racing with, and especially back then, and with a small block Chevrolet, no less.
Yeah. 250-inch car. So that's the dragster? Is that what?
Yeah.
So, wow. I mean, that was your first experience on a racetrack, was with a dragster?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
That's crazy. You didn't, screw the door car. We're going straight to a dragster.
Big balls right there. Big balls.
I've been a dragster guy my entire career. I've never driven drag car, door car.
Really?
It's on my list.
Yeah, you should.
I really like Top Sportsman.
Yeah.
I'm all about Top Sportsman and Top Dragster because it's in my wheelhouse.
Right, like the real fast ones are not as fun to get in and out of, I'm sure, as far as the dragster, because you got some easy access there. But yeah, that's wild that you went straight into it, and I think Vern had a similar story to that too, where you went straight to a dragster or something crazy. Well, that's cool. So you, what kind of times were you running with your first car?
I was super cop car. I've been wide open. The thing would run like 860s, 870s.
That's respectable.
Yeah,
not bad. And then was that a naturally aspirated alcohol car?
It was alcohol injected. I've never owned a carburetor. It's been it's been fuel injected from day one. So and my dad ran injection. He ran 8-stack injection.
Yeah,
because we didn't have to repeat. Obviously, we were trying to go fast in the sand.
The joke around here is carburetors should come with white New Balances and long top socks. But to be quite honest with you, with the fuel injection nowadays, I think us mechanical fuel injection guys probably need some New Balances too. To be quite honest with you. So you were you successful with your first car, or how did you do it?
I was successful at learning, but I was not successful at winning rounds. The car was too long, the motor was too far from the rear end.
Yeah.
All kinds of things I didn't know then.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, why won't this thing repeat? Why do I spin the tires every once in a while? It's like, well, it's an alcohol car designed for a Lenko and a Hemi, and you've got a small block Chevy in it.
Yeah. So the weight was a little bit off. Was that did you say it was a front engine car or rear engine? I didn't.
It was a rear engine car.
Rear engine car. So behind you. That was that's pretty wild. Did you end up figuring it out, or did you get rid of it before you did?
Oh yeah, no, I figured it out, and some racing friends that I continued to acquire as I was racing. One of them ended up buying that car, shortening the rear end of the car and making it more like a bracket car for a shorty glide. Okay. And he wound up putting a blown small block in it for quick racing, and it worked really well.
Cool.
It was a well-built car.
Yeah.
But it was wrong for the combination I had for sure. And then that's when I built my first 4-link car. Was probably it was a 1999 actually.
So the Mark Williams car was a hardtail.
Yep, that was the only hardtail I've owned. Actually, no, it wasn't. I owned a Spitzer after that. It was a hardtail.
And so you built a 4-link car?
Or? Yeah, I built a 4-link car. Yep.
Okay, cool.
It was a 235-inch car with a same small. I was a small block guy because my dad was a small block guy.
Yeah.
Partially for economic reasons back then because I already had a bunch of parts.
Yeah.
And and it didn't make sense to throw all this on the shelf financially and go buy big block stuff.
Yeah, me and Chris are in the same boat. We both campaign small block stuff, and it's just easier to have extra parts that way.
Yeah.
It would cost us a lot to transfer over, but eventually we're just going to have to bite it and go at least big block because our tongue's hanging out with the small blocks when we go real fast. There's only so much horsepower you can manageably do without really hanging the tongue out.
I ended up going really far with the small blocks to the point where I had a down nozzle 871 high helix blower on a solid head down nozzle motor. I went way too far with small blocks for pocket book, but I did. It was fast.
So what kind of horsepower were you getting out of those, you think? Estimates?
The motor I just referred to?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Estimated 7. We never dynoed the motor, but Ed Wasserbeck built my motor. He's a local regional speed guy, and he estimated 1,700.
Wow. That's getting it with a small block.
Mm-hmm.
That's getting it with a small block. That car would run 650.
And we're also talking about a time in the early 90s where the development isn't as what we have today. There's a lot stronger parts. People are getting 2,500 horse out of them now. Pretty reasonably.
I quit racing in 2008 prior to my re-engagement with racing about a year and a half ago now, and I cannot get over what has happened, both with organizations like you're involved with.
Yeah.
And motor combinations and parts. Nick, our friend here that has this big block, he runs easily in the 3s, and I just can't. When I quit racing, a big block Chevrolet would not go down a steep hill in the 3s.
Racing backwards on KD
all day long now, and it's amazing.
Yeah, wow. So you did the 4-link car. I'm trying to look through the notes that you gave me here. Eventually, you kind of decided to hang it up, but before you did, you were trying to maybe campaign 2 different cars or into different classes or funny cars.
My entire goal from the time I was old enough to understand what top alcohol was, I wanted to be a top alcohol driver. Okay. I wanted to own my own alcohol car.
Yeah.
I did the whole Frank Holly thing, and I was lucky enough to be befriended by Jeff Wilson Racing, which was a championship level top alcohol dragster. And one thing led to another. He asked me to start coming along and crewing for him.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually Bubba, our mutual friend Bob, he wound up being eventually the crew chief on that car.
Mm-hmm.
And I crewed for him for a number of years, 5 or 6 years. And he decided he was going to go A-fuel racing. He wanted to build an A-fuel dragster. And the blown car, we were running on Division 3 here, obviously, and he's out of St. Louis. And he offered me if I could find the funding to drive the blown car. Man, I was so excited. I was just like, this is like a life dream, right? So bottom line is I struggled to find, it takes 6 digits to run one of those cars.
Well, that was going to be a question for me, for you, is even in those years, what would it cost to campaign a car like that?
Easily, if you want to run for the divisional championship, you're going to be with a blown car. Back in those days when you almost couldn't warm the car up without burning push rods up, and there was a lot of valve train issues with the Hemis, and there was some parts attrition then that you don't really have now.
Right.
But easily $100,000 up to $180,000 a year, and most of the guys racing at that level are operating off of corporate money, either their own corporation or they have business deals that makes financial sense to do it. And his was certainly a business situation with Starcon International, which is a company that maintains refineries. They go in during shutdowns and basically do all the maintenance on all the equipment within a refinery. And that was his day job, so to speak. Well, he had a situation where they were able to get together on a business deal, and it went for years and years. And we wound up getting hooked up with Evan Knoll, which some of the racers that have been around for a long time know that name. He owns Torco Racing Fuels. He's a guy that had all the Torco cars in the early 2000s. He wound up in prison. But that's a whole separate podcast.
Was it money laundering or anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. It was huge. It was huge. But Connie Coletta was getting money. All of the fuel cars were getting money. If you remember, he was always standing on the starting line. And,
it reminds me of that. There's a Netflix series about a guy getting into F1 that was from Florida, and he was running drugs to be able to fund the operation.
I think I remember that.
Yeah. That was pretty wild. People... even our level of racing, we're able to combine some costs because we got 2 cars, so we kind of share some of that burden. But when even that, just campaigning your own car in our division, I estimate it costs $15,000 to $20,000 a year just to do that, and that's pretty conservative. When you're talking about fuel, diesel, parts, because you got to maintain some parts, spark plugs, oil. If you just add all that stuff up, it's not a cheap sport to do, even on a lower level. If you go bracket racing at your local track, you could probably get that down relatively cheap. But even us, our closest track is about an hour away, so you still got some incurred costs to do it, But it's nothing compared to even in the late '90s to try to run an alcohol car. Is just wild.
They're crazy, and you can't have one motor. There's a guy, I wish I could remember his name right now. I would totally give him a plug. There's one A-Fuel guy. I think he's out of Washington State. I'm not sure. He's got a ton of YouTube. He's doing series similar to what you guys are doing.
You talking about Greg?
Yes.
Yep, I know. I know him on through here. It's one of the contacts I'm sending out to try to get on the podcast.
He's great.
Yeah, he's got tons of stories, and he started that it's called the Cool Kids Club. On YouTube. It's a podcast that him and a couple of his buddies will sit around and talk. I actually introduced you to him a couple weeks ago. Okay. Yeah, he's a very brilliant guy, very smart.
I spent a lot of years around these alcohol cars and a lot of the different stories and families, and I've never seen anyone take the time to do what he's done online to educate people. It's like, this is what this costs. And it's not just the money. You need to be here every night, and it needs you better get home at 4 because you're going to be in the garage till 11 o'clock, and that's just to run maybe competitively and maybe qualify. It's just, he puts it in perspective.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. When you get to that level, there's a good chance you'll be spending that much money and never actually get to race because you can't get qualified. When the fields are large enough and the payouts make sense to make all this travel work.
Especially when you're running the Juju juice, 52% oxygen by volume. That's you got to know what you're doing.
Well, and that's the other aspect of it too. How much money do you have to spend in mistakes before? Because there's very nice people out there that are willing to kind of give you some of the good pointers, but some mistakes you just got to learn on your own. And that's another cost involved people don't really understand either is those mistakes cost a lot of money sometimes.
There's guys out there that will sell you a tune-up. A lot of the big names that we're all familiar with in that category, both funny car and alcohol dragster, ARA fuel, either one, that will sell you their tune-up, and it'll just about knock you over when they tell you the price. But
but it's
still cheaper.
It's still cheaper.
It's still cheaper.
The only downside to that is what I hate is you never actually learned it yourself. So if you make any adjustments, you're probably still in the same boat of paying your tuition and making a mistake somewhere.
If you don't invest in basically understanding what just happened, I still think if you're starting, like if you're an individual that made it big in the stock market or whatever, and you had to go alcohol racing, I totally think that's worth it. That's actually, I have no stories like that, leaving all names out of it. But then you have to start investing in what the person there is teaching you. That's one thing that I crew quite a bit with. Actually, this summer I did. I probably won't this year because I'm going to be racing myself finally. But Phil is a really smart guy, and he brings people along that are smart, and he invests in understanding what they're teaching him and moving his knowledge forward. And if you're just always relying on so and so to come tune your car and you never learn anything, and you're not getting anywhere.
I got to give a plug to Bubba because he helped me out, and I liked his effort of helping me out, where he allowed me to kind of voice my own opinion about something, and he would be like, "Nah, that's not how that should be." But it helped because he allowed me to work through it in my own head, so I was capable of doing the decision making once he wasn't around. Like you're saying, if you can't afford to buy the tuner to stay with you, you're gonna have to make some decisions on your own that could cost you a lot of money. So my whole goal this year was I was just keeping it so fat I got to change the oil per race, but just to make sure that I wasn't screwing it up. But we started leaning on a little bit towards the end. I just didn't have enough tire for it. Which
a little bit of timing, a little less fuel, and
I was pulling 26 degrees timing off the hit, and I still couldn't make it go down the track. And we even turned the barrel valve around.
You had a small tire issue. Right?
Well, we fixed that. We got tires on the other side of this camera that's going under it. I got the big Bubbas. So
no pun intended.
I texted Bubba earlier, and I said, "Hey, I forgot to text you." I sent him a picture. I said, "I bought the problem solvers," and he goes, "It's just going to move the problem somewhere else."
That's right. That's the Bubba I know. It's just going to change your failure point.
He never. I said, "You're not wrong," and he never responded. That's what I love about Bubba is that those answers are perfect because he's not wrong. That's great. So you decided to hang it up, and what was the cause of that? You just was financially, you're just done with it, or were you frustrated, or what?
Without getting too far in the weeds on that too, I basically wound up running a Division 4 race and drove Jeff's car for testing and licensing, and I had a dozen or so top alcohol passes under my belt, and I loved it. The problem is I couldn't afford it. And rightfully, Jeff mandated that I signed a contract when I jumped in his car. If I wreck it, I replace it.
Yeah.
And I had a whatever, at that point, I'm going to guess 4-year-old and a 7-year-old at home.
Yeah.
And all of the normal life things happening. And while I could afford to go to Frank Hawley and run a couple of races on my dime, as long as nothing goes wrong, I was very uncomfortable in the seat of his race car. Oh, by the way, he's running for Division 3. Don't wreck his car because he's number 3 in points right now, or number 4.
No pressure.
And now I'm going to screw up the rest of his year. Potentially. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. But I suspect Mike Spitzer would have probably put the car together pretty quickly. But still, it's a lot. It was pressure in my head. I wasn't enjoying it, and I needed my own car or I'm out. So I had Mike Spitzer build me. I sold the 4-link car, and I had him build me a 270-inch all carbon fiber body Spitzer car and put that real badass small block I told you about in there. And the reason I did that is because NHRA announced they're going to run top dragster. It's like, hey, a blower class I can afford. I think I can do that. So I show up to the very first race of the year that I went to anyway, which I might have been the Spring Nationals. I can't remember, here in Columbus. And I run down to the staging lanes in my 1,700 horsepower blown small block. And I look behind me, and I see every deadly bracket car that won't run faster than during those days, 780s, 770s. filling the lanes behind me. It's like, okay, I just brought a knife to a gunfight because this class is not full of blower classes. You may or may not have been involved back then, but IHRA had a very successful top dragster category. And I thought, man, if NHRA announced that, those guys and they were fast. They were all blown, all fast. They're all going to come to NHRA. None of them did. The whole lanes were full of really, really successful, good racers from Super Comp. All they did is turn off their throttle stop. It's like, crap.
I think the IHRA, at least during that time, was treating the racers a little bit better than NHRA at the time, and that's probably why nobody wanted to transition over or do anything with it.
Probably so.
I'm hoping that the NHRA at least broadens their horizons a little bit in the very near future, because to me, they are kind of the dying breed when you have good programs out there. The WDRA is now coming up, and people. I retract that. I never even heard of the NDRL until Bill told me about it, our mutual friend. And I went out, and of course, I've got this thing behind me, 99% built to go top dragster racing with PDRA next year. Yeah,
and I see all these really cool front engine cars. These guys are having fun. You know, obviously they're not spending the kind of money that alcohol cars are, and it's like, wow, I'm second guessing my decision here to build my car.
I think, for one, you need to campaign that car. You've put a lot of money and effort into it. You need to do that. But personally, once you're done, screwing around with the fast stuff like that, you need to, maybe go into a little front engine dragster or even an altered or something. They're not
myself and a few people hopefully listening right now. I've already posed the idea that we kind of pool our money together, and I've got small block parts coming out my rear end here in this garage. And if somebody happens to buy a front engine chassis, I don't care who drives it. Let's get this sucker out there.
So we definitely there you go. Let's go, Bubba. That would be so much fun. All right, let's take a little quick break for our sponsor, and then we'll be right back with what you're doing now.
Do you need an engine built right for your car? Take it from us. Call Performance Automotive in Bethel, Illinois. Whether it's a small block, big block, Chevy, Ford, or even a diesel. Call Mike or Gordon. These guys are guys that you can trust. That's Performance Automotive, and tell them Line Lock sent ya.
All right, welcome back. Make sure if you want to go top alcohol racing, you give the guys over at Performance Automotive your phone number, because they could take care of you. Isn't that right?
Oh my gosh, those guys are great, man.
Yeah. All right, we're back here with Bruce, and we're going to talk about what the future holds and what he's doing right now. So I could see behind you, you've got a little dragster with a tiny little motor. You can barely see it.
Little 521 here. I'll give you a little bird's eye view there.
Yeah, it's so badass.
Like
wow.
They sent me a video of it running the other day, and it sounds tough. It sounds real tough. So that's what you're into right now, and
they're all fast in the garage, right? They're all fast in the garage.
That's true.
They're all race winners.
So you decided to get back into racing. How many years ago now? A couple years ago?
About 2 years ago. Really, in the middle of COVID, to be honest with you. And it didn't start with me. It started with my son. He's an engineering student, and he's always cursed me for getting out of drag racing when he was a boy. And he was really down and out there. They weren't allowed to go anywhere or do anything at school. And I've had in the back of my mind a little itch. We all refer to as drag racing. And I thought, you know what if I find a used dragster somewhere and kind of try to pep my kid up and keep his interest in engineering and school by putting him in a driver's seat, and he gets to help on the race car. Well, I talked to Nick and Bill Hamilton. They had one of my old blown small block rear engine cars that they had mothballed in the corner of the garage. They've got a whole stable of cars, right? So,
I'm only aware of the ones I see so far. I haven't seen the other stuff yet. I was actually surprised he's selling that Ford Ranger. That was new to me, new information. That was kind of a cool car.
A lot of cool stuff. Well, this little green dragster was all sad looking in the corner, and Bubba kept saying, they've got your old dragster. They've got your old dragster. He said it like 10 times to me. It's like, daggone it. So we started talking, and we made a deal. They made me a great deal.
Yeah.
It needed freshened, but it was complete. So I bought it, and that's what we did. We got it recertified, put new rubber on it, and seat belts, and and freshen the little blown small block, which are the same heads I put on it 20 years ago, believe it or not. The castings are.
Wow.
And the same blower.
Yeah.
And it's a good little car. Thing will, I'm only 8th miling with my son. And I said to myself, I'm not going to drive again. I'm just going to have fun with Jet. My son's name is Jet. And we're just going to let him learn. Well, that lasted about half the season. And I'm looking ahead in the staging lanes, behind in the staging lanes, and I'm standing behind the car, beside the car, everywhere, just pacing, getting itchy. And the other thought I've had since I quit racing, and I've said it out loud to everyone, if there's ever going to be a really fast bracket program where everybody's blown, you got to qualify to get in, 4 seconds or faster, I would seriously consider jumping back in. And I've known the PDRA has been doing it for a number of years now. Well, it just, the hook kept getting set and set and set. And last spring I went down to North Carolina and bought one of Darian Bosch's old cars. It's a 2017 Miller car, 255, and I converted it from big block Chevy to Hemi. And I bought Phil Les's alcohol funny car motor, and he was kind enough to assemble it for me, and found a Chuck Ford blower, put that on it, and then found an injector off of another guy. Actually, the blower and the injector came from, you ever heard of the car called Christine? It's a shoebox. Chris Klein is his name. He runs down in the Carolinas, but it's been floating around. It's a really cool car. He's built a new one. But
is it a
blower and everything came
1470?
off of his car because they made PSI blowers legal for a lot of the Pro Mod stuff. So all of these super uber expensive blowers weren't so uber expensive.
Is it a 1471? It looked big.
It's a 14. Yeah, it's a 1471, and supposedly made something like 37 pounds of boost at 20 over. So it's a pretty stout little blower.
Yeah, I'd say it's good and tight. You get it freshened up, or you run it as is, or do you freshen yourself?
It's pretty fresh.
Is it?
It's pretty fresh. Actually, Bubba tore it apart for me and looked at it, and it's pretty good.
Cool.
It's pretty good. We're gonna run it. At least for now. I need to license yet. I haven't licensed yet. We're gonna go down to Orlando at the end of January.
Okay. Yeah, that's another thing. So you have to get a license, a long wheelbase license too.
From the ground up, because I let all my licenses expire over 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So I'm back at it. So.
Well, that'll be, to be quite honest with you, I think it's probably in your best interest to go ahead and get that done, just because you're talking 380s in the 8th. That is no joke.
That's only a little bit slower than the alcohol cars where I drove. I mean, I was running 360s. 363 was the fastest 8th mile I can ever remember. Yeah. And it was only, a dozen passes or so that fast. My blown small block car was like 420, considerably slower than what this is going to be. So
yeah, cool. So you're hoping this year get your license in January, and you're going to try to run the PDRA circuit, right?
Yeah, I've been watching them like a hawk. I have. I'm wearing Bill and Nick out. I do all the math. I figure out average reaction times, average ETs that win, average ETs that are the bump spot, math a million different ways, so I know what I'm dealing with.
Yeah, we love math. We love data. We sit in there and look at it all the time. How many races is that a year?
I believe it's 8 races, although Bill texted me the 2024 schedule, and I haven't looked at it yet.
Well, I saw they added Bristol, so I didn't know if that was an additional race or something.
I don't know. I need to look at that.
Yeah, so that's something that just came up on my feed that it was kind of interesting. I guess that they normally didn't race there, so maybe they put it in a different slot of another track. But I assume you'll probably end up at St. Louis again at some point. What other?
Probably if they go out there. Yeah.
What other tracks do they normally go to?
Galat, I know. Some of the tracks I forget the names of them. A lot of them I've never been to. Yeah. Like those North Carolina area tracks. I've never been to any of those. I was always with Wilson and now this most recently with Phil and running around the NHRA tracks that are national and divisional event stuff. Regional. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Other than that, is there anything exciting in your world that?
No, I do. Am I allowed to give a plug?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So right behind me, so what my day job, one of the things I do is I fabricate plastic components and parts and I print on plastic and glass and a bunch of weird stuff that we'll talk about later. But, this is something that I cut for a company called Clear One. They're available in Summit Racing and Jegs, I believe. And I'm helping him develop a sportsman level tool tray for the top of a roll cage for all dragsters, super comp, bracket cars, whatever, because I got addicted to these at the alcohol races.
Yeah.
And you talk about not wondering where your tools are and you're laying stuff on the car. This eliminates it. And
Great
he is
idea.
just getting ready to bring these things out, and they are awesome. And
Looks
it's
like it's
not
got
because I cut the plastic. It's just they're for legit. They're really cool.
Does it come with the magnets and stuff on the side for your wrenches?
Yes.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's funny because I was actually looking for something like that similar to for our bracket cars, and I couldn't find anything. Nothing
There's
what I
not much
wanted.
out
So
there.
that's very interesting to see that. That's pretty awesome.
I would say you need to design one that can hold a bird catcher or something too.
They, let's see. Are you guys running bird catchers right now?
I am, and he's got like a shotgun style. But
Okay.
anything the hat size or whatever would be perfect for whenever we do check plugs.
He has them for smaller ones for carburetors, that are designed for like the Dominator top. But he doesn't have anything. That's an interesting thought that we could come up with something for the traditional Enderley shape that fits down over it like a hat.
Should be pretty easy.
For the dragster guys, these are awesome. I'm trying to talk Nick into getting one because it keeps everything organized.
Yeah, no, they're slick. I love them. Greg on the guy you were talking about earlier, his last post was in Las Vegas, and he had a tool cart just like that, similar to it. And
theirs are much larger because they have so much stuff.
So much stuff, yeah. But I thought, man, it'd be cool to have something a little smaller just for what we do, which isn't a ton. We're not rebuilding motors between rounds done, but
exactly. And then that's why this is so much smaller because none of us are doing that. You just need a place to change your plugs and have a few tools.
You even have a little place for the spark. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's, there's holes all through here for anything you want to hang.
That's slick.
And all that's for the wrenches. There's trays in here. $350.
That ain't bad. That's a good price point.
So how do you get a hold of one of those if you wanted one? Just to give a
Contender
shout out.
Performance. Call Contender Performance, which he also owns Shiftnoid. We've all heard of Shiftnoid. His name is Bob Alborn, and he's a sharp cookie. But he owns Shiftnoid and Clear One, and his kind of his base camp is Contender Performance.
When we get done with this, email us the contact for that, and we will put it in the show notes to make sure everybody can find one if they want one. I think it's a pretty great idea. Yeah. All right, so we are going to, I guess, leave you now unless you got something. You want to say a big shout out to any of your sponsorships or anything else?
I don't have any. That's on my short list.
All right.
It's hard to get sponsored when you haven't driven a car in over closer to 15 years.
So if you want to start on the ground floor, Bruce is your guy. He could get in cheap on the sponsorship thing, and then when he wins the PDRA,
really cheap.
Then it's you just got a cheap investment. So that's fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, man.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you, man.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Listening to your story. It's been awesome.
And
Thanks for having me.
we were going to, you mentioned it in the email, we are going to next year when you actually start doing this, we're going to catch up with you again. So maybe after you go to Orlando and get your licensing, we'll bring you back on, and then we'll do the progression, the rebirth, as you will, of Bruce into getting his license and then getting into a dragster again after, I think it was like 13 years is what you said since you've been in one?
At least. I would have to think about the math. 2009. So do that math for me. It's the last time I drove a race car.
14
years. Wow.
14 years ago.
Yeah.
And back then you were not running. Were you running 360s? You said, right? So what you said?
Alcohol cars and my blown small block.
So I'm hoping it's like a riding a bike for you, and you can just jump right in, and everything feels good. But man, I'm telling you, those speeds, it's gotta. I think I would hit a factory reset as soon as I release the button. I would just go scared instantly. That's crazy.
Hey, this time, one thing I'll say about the alcohol car that's interesting. It's cool insight. You spend your whole life wanting to go that fast, and you finally get your opportunity to do it first at Frank Holly. His cars aren't that fast. His cars are more like 6.0 for safety reasons. That's a different story too, because we broke the frame in half. We only got one pass. We all got sent home. I didn't break it.
Yeah.
Somebody shook the car and broke it.
Yeah.
But one thing that nobody prepares you for, it was pretty much what I thought it was. You remember, you're shifting these cars. These are blown cars, and his was a B&J, which is another company like Linco.
Yeah.
And you shift them. They're pneumatic on the steering wheel, and the RPMs are near vertical, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the RPMs are not just going, it's going straight to 11 grand to the moon, and you got to catch it or else you're going to blow the motor.
Yeah.
So shift. And it's like, man, I nailed it, because you got a giant shift light right in front of you. And I nailed it. And I'm in the middle of the groove. That's great. You know what nobody prepares you for is pulling the chutes the first time at
It's hard.
263 miles per hour.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
I was impressed at Martin, Michigan, because so we were sitting there and we just kept hearing a bunch of two thuds after every pass of the Pro Mod guys. And I looked at Nick, I was like, what the hell is that noise? And he's looking around and we didn't know what it was. And because we've seen them run before, but we never noticed it until there. Yeah. But it's the parachutes coming out and you hear the thuds. And I don't know if maybe the moisture content was high and that's what caused the louder noise more than normal. But it sounds like somebody's getting punched in the face when you pull those things.
It feels like you're getting punched in the face when those chutes hit.
Yeah.
It's a comforting feeling that the chutes hit.
And I'll tell you, because I've pulled my chute in my truck going very slow. I just do it for show more than anything.
Yeah, it's fun.
But in Martin anyway, you could feel it was back there. I mean, it hit way harder there than normal anyway. So it had to be something with that track or that weather that caused it to be so violent. But I could only imagine what it feels like going 260. I mean, that's
260 miles an hour. It's like the biggest dude you've ever seen in your life is trying to yank you out of that car is what it feels like.
Wow.
It's
that's gotta be scary. But
yeah, it only lasts for like 2 or 3 seconds, but that's an interesting insight that I've never heard anybody else share that licensed alcohol or fuel or whatever, and it really was exactly what I thought it would be.
Yeah, so you're talking
violent, it's fast, and it's exhilarating, and your adrenaline's through the moon. But when you hit the chutes, it's like, what the hell was that? I mean, it's just like, wow.
And even because I even felt it at close to 160, and you're talking 260, which is a whole 100-mile-an-hour faster. But it's like it's a root mean square problem, because could you imagine what it feels like going 340? And those top. The nitro guys. That's got to hit it even harder.
Well, Garlis had to quit driving in the early 90s or late 80s because his retinas were separating.
Yeah, jeez.
Back then.
Jeez.
Now, obviously, I think he had a degenerative something causing that, but the drag racing was it was making it worse.
And they can have all the safety in the world, but I don't know of anything that holds your retinas in. SFI hadn't come out with nothing yet. Anyway.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, buddy, man, it was a pleasure talking to you, and we will most definitely have you back on because I want to know how the licensing does for you, because I'm real excited
I'll
for you.
clue you guys in on that, and I'm interested and excited because Greg, the A Fuel guy, has done such a nice job, giving insight into an A Fuel car. Well, I don't know of anyone else doing this for Top Dragster. It's like, okay, well, we're bracket racing in the threes.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you figure that out?
No, and that's a wild concept too. That is so fast to try to be consistent with. It doesn't make, because even our fast guys, 7.0 guys, they can hit 7.0s pretty decent, but they still do a wide range. You're talking 7.1, sometimes 7.2 on some of them. So that's a pretty wide range of these cars, and to get double O's and anything is difficult. But when you're talking 380 racing or whatever, to go consistently back-to-back runs without, we're talking about hundreds, it's insane that's even possible. It's wild.
Yeah, and some of these guys are holding numbers. I mean, when you look at the data, it's easy to see they're holding numbers in the threes.
Yeah, that's crazy.
They're just trying to tree somebody and holding a number. It's like,
it's crazy.
All right, man. And the guy that won the championship, I don't know him from Adam.
How do you even think fast enough? So you hold a number and you get down to the finish line. How do you even finish line drive that? You don't have any time.
I've never been that fast bracket racing. I've only been that fast just keeping it in the groove.
Yeah.
It's totally a different deal.
I couldn't imagine. Yeah. I have a hard time with a 8-9 second truck trying to finish line drive. And you seem like you have the world on your shoulder as far as time wise. And you don't, but then you go down to 380 racing and literally you launch, and within a second you start realizing where your competition is, and now you only have less than a second to decide how you're going to finish line drive them. Right. I just don't understand it. It's wild.
I actually look for year one to be an education year for me because it is different. I mean, I've heads up raced slightly faster than that, and I've bracket raced much slower than that. So now I'm going to bracket race only slightly slower than the alcohol cars I drove 15 years ago. So crazy.
Well, man, good luck to you. I really hope everything goes great for you down in Orlando. Hope the motor does what you want it to do and you get the numbers that you like. And we will definitely be in touch with you very, very soon. Thanks for coming on there, Bruce.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks, man.
Take it easy.
All right, man. So that was great. That was very informative information, and listening to his story, it was pretty damn good.
He's an interesting guy, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's got a lot of knowledge up there. And we didn't even get into everything he knows about blowers and injectors and everything else, because I hear he's a whiz kid with that. At least that was one thing I was supposed to address. But we don't have hours on end.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of other things too, like pinballs and hockey.
We didn't even get into any of that. Yeah, evidently he's he was almost a Wayne Gretzky at one point.
And laundromats.
And laundromats.
Oh man! So hey, we got some viewer mail here, real quick. So on one of our episodes, IB Creative is the username. He said Pro 1 and Pro 2.
Yeah, I think he was saying when we were addressing having enough cars count to be able to do an AB field, and it sounds like he's for it.
Yeah, I would think that for at least the Pro Gas circuit in our NDRL racing, we have 60 cars or so, and we're running 1150 cars against 80 cars.
Yeah, essentially.
And that's a big spread of time.
Big spread.
So I think it would be pretty intuitive to break 10 seconds and slower into one, and then the slower ones or faster ones.
A lot of times in Pro Gas, we'll have enough cars to be able to break it into like 32 car fields.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. But the problem is in Pro Comp, we just don't have enough cars to be able to break it up to different times. But most of those guys are running a lot faster than 10. So
I think there's a lot more going into it. A lot more issues that brings when you try to split those groups up into two, like the entry fees and the payouts.
And the biggest thing is the championship series. How do you work that out? Is it still just one and you group the two? I don't know.
Yeah. So anyways, that's thank you, IB Creative, for writing that. And our other viewer mail that we got is in response to our NDRL banquet in the casino that we went to, and how you were out all night partying
in the disco.
In the disco. Robbie Friels 1057 says, the club was a 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s themed club, not totally a disco. But
I didn't know what to call it at the time. I guess maybe a nightclub, but whatever.
Disco, you think dancing and everything, I guess.
It was a good time.
But Robbie Friels is part of the Friel Circus, and we've pretty much put out a challenge for them for the Blood Brothers race team, and he says, and if you really want that smoke from the circus, you got it.
Bring it.
Bring it.
We want all the smoke, Robbie. All of it. We just had our guy that's going to take care of our 7-0s. He was just on the podcast. I don't even noticed him, but he was here, and he's going to kill you guys. Just done. I tell you what, Robbie, just stay home. All right. I don't want you to waste all your money showing up.
And he actually put on there a little one of those emojis,
the kissy faces,
a little kissy with a little heart on there. That was really sweet, Robbie. But Robbie is actually going to be our next podcast guest.
Oh, we're going to get into it.
Yes, it's going to be exciting because the heat is going to start growing here, and it's going to be exciting to hear all that kind of stuff.
All right, last chance, fellas and ladies. If you want a little Christmas ornament, give us an email, linelockedpodcast@gmail.com. Send us your address. We'll send you out this guy. This will be the last call for that. We're sending them out the first week of December.
Yeah, and that's a little cool thing to put on your Christmas tree.
Yeah, and there's even like tape on the back. You could just put it on a toolbox if you want.
Or stick it on mom or dad's car right on the windshield.
It's certainly inconvenient, but I sure do love the Blood Brothers Racing channel.
Anyways.
Right, we will see you next time.
Be sure to like and subscribe. Comment down below. Let us know what you think. If we're good or bad, like our review, we had a bad one. Anyways, I'm Chris.
And I'm Corey. And we are Line Locked.
1, 2, 3. 1 and 2 and 3.
We need a timer, Chris.
We need a timer. See you guys. Be careful.